Hey everybody, it's Paul with the Curators and my good friend Johnny Paradise. Johnny, you are having a hell of a day down there in the middle of Hurricane Helene, and that would not stop you from doing our podcast together. God bless you.
Well, you know what? It's an honor and a privilege. So yeah, thank you for joining me today, Paul. This is great.
Okay. Did you lose power? You lost power?
We lost power for a moment there a second ago. We were getting all set up, and the internet's out, the cable's out. So yeah, it's been a long time since that's happened around here. So yeah,
Okay.
a lot of
Well,
wins.
well, we've been in the eye of the hurricane for many months now together, and trying to keep calm in the storm. We wanted to discuss the Farm Bill, which I know you're very familiar with. That is before the Senate and the House. There's different versions. The House bill is H.R. 8467. We did a roundtable discussion last night with several experts, and there's a few things in there that are seeking to undermine human health. Surprise, surprise. So that corporate profits can remain intact and corporate power can remain intact. Why don't you talk about that a little bit, Johnny, and we'll go back and forth on it, okay?
That sounds great. The big
Yeah.
concern is that, they're attempting to make themselves a liability shield. And there's nothing like this for any other product or any other service except, the vaccines that are on the childhood schedule. And since they got a liability shield for those, they've more than quintupled the schedule for the kids. So the question is, do they mean to 5x the amount of poison that's being used on our food and getting into our water? And, this is just wild. In 2018, Kennedy, he sued Monsanto and he beat him, which it ended up being billions of dollars, $12 billion. And this was for non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. Yet Monsanto still says this is not a carcinogen. That doesn't cause cancer. And so these guys, they've been caught, concocting their own studies. The Monsanto papers go over that. And so this is a firm that's just scandal after scandal. They've been up to no good, and now they're looking for a liability shield. And
Which only shows what? That they know that their product causes damage. Just to be clear, Johnny, 1986, the Vaccine Act that was passed gave Wyeth and all vaccine developers immunity, interesting word, from any liability that the damages from their vaccines may cause, right?
right,
And and they told Reagan at the time that we cannot afford to do this because the liability is too great. These vaccines are inherently unsafe. So they were given exoneration, and as you pointed out a moment ago, that vaccine schedule then exploded because lo and behold, they have no downside. They don't even have to incur marketing expenses, right? So now, isn't that the playbook that these chemical companies like Bayer, Monsanto are trying to use to exonerate themselves from chemicals like glyphosate, Roundup, that they know are causing great damage, disrupting our endocrine system, uh, penetrating the blood brain barrier, the blood testes barrier, destroying the microbiome? We can go on, and the list of chronic diseases that mirrors the use of these pesticides almost in lockstep makes it pretty clear to me. You know why, Johnny? Because I played connect the dots when I was a kid.
right. We were both big fans of Kennedy's campaign, and one
Yes.
thing that he spoke about quite often is that we're seeing all these diseases go up in tandem together. Since the early
Right.
'90s. And glyphosate is one of the environmental toxins that has, had that same increased use that matches, that rise. So, correlation doesn't, mean causation all the time, but it's your first clue. And the correlation between glyphosate and autism specifically, it's off the charts. It's something you never really see in real life in statistics. There's an R value of 0.997 to give you an idea, so uh,
Explain what that means, Johnny.
well, if it was a one-to-one relationship, you press a brake on your car and the car stops, that would be an R value of one. So this is 0.997. So that's pretty close. There's other factors out there, of course. Genetics, and we're
Mm-hmm.
swimming in toxins, right? But yeah, this is an incredible correlation. Dr. Stephanie Seneff, she goes over a lot of these correlations in her work. There's thousands of peer-reviewed studies. Hers in particular, she really goes into how for about 2 dozen diseases, they're going parabolic, and that's in lockstep with the increased use of glyphosate. So, she describes how, this is registered as an antibiotic, right? It kills
Mhm.
bacteria in the gut biome. So this is really hard on our digestion and hard on our immunity and creating the vitamins we need. But it the way it does that is because it chelates the manganese, and it chelates a lot of these critical minerals that we need for so many of our processes in the body. And so, as this happens, we just see, all these different diseases, be it neurological, be it obesity, diabetes, autoimmune diseases, we all just see them going up together. And so, if there was just one thing that we could do to improve health, I think, getting glyphosate out of our food would be it. And there's actually, a way to do that where we could reduce 80% of our exposure if we just quit using it as a desiccant at harvest. This is something they're doing right now since 2006. And this is just wild because, the crops are grown, they're ready to harvest. And just, to save a little money, they're using this.
Not a lot, just because they could harvest through other means, like swathing, for example, right? There's other things they can do, but this is a boondoggle for these chemical companies, and then there's a whole reward system attached to the use of these chemicals, right? So I know you know a little bit about that too.
Right. They got the rewards that they're setting up. So it's like a credit card reward that you're using for work. Now you get your bonus miles that you can use personally. So they have a kind of a scheme set up in that way for the people who are buying these chemicals, who are working for the governments a lot of times. And yeah, this stuff is just it's out of the realm of believability, how bad it is. Us in America, we used to live just as long as our European friends, and now we're living 5 and 6 years less than them. And that was just 40 years ago that we were living just as long as them. And the difference is this glyphosate. It's a big difference. Um, Europe uses less than a tenth of what we use. We're using 3 pounds per person per year in our country, 1 billion pounds of it. And when they use it, you just use just a tiny bit can go a long way. So that really just adds up to a massive effect. This stuff, like I said, it's an antibiotic. It also kills insects. A recent report came out on the endangered species list, and 93%
Yes,
of the animals that are on that list of being endangered in our country are harmed by glyphosate. And so,
and are truly endangered. They're on their way out.
right, we're talking about the real critical ones there. And yeah, but it just gives you an idea. How come you can drive for hours on end in our country and you don't have insects on your bug screen anymore, on your windscreen? Well, it's because of glyphosate. That's what a lot of experts believe. So
And it's you're right. I mean, glyphosate is front and center, the number one cause here, but there are other chemicals too. So spraying mosquito spray over New York City to prevent the one case of West Nile virus that they recorded in that season, right, throughout the entire city, and now they spray the whole city, and people don't even know that they're being sprayed now.
you're
So there's another example of things that go on, and what's in the water, the atrazine in the water, the paraquat, which is linked to Parkinson's disease. There's all kinds of these atrocities going on. And I heard you say, we did a recent podcast a few months back, and you said that the average person takes in 3 pounds of Roundup glyphosate in their system every year. 3 pounds. And when I heard Casey Means talking about this the other day on a roundtable discussion with Bobby Kennedy, she confirmed that. She said 1 billion pounds a year of glyphosate in this country.
right. Well,
Not nowhere
well,
else in
what?
the world, just here.
Well, that's how much they're
That's
using on our crops, right? So a lot of that's running off and getting down into the rivers, and yeah, we got dead zones in the Gulf. So this is affecting our fish, and this stuff. you mentioned it crosses that blood-brain barrier and the blood-testes barrier. You know, it's found in
Yes,
mother's breast milk. This is a real problem. We're having a fertility crisis where,
we are.
sperm counts are down about 70% since the 70s. And, women have similar problems with estrogen. And so, we're a sick, broken, dying country. And we got to change that.
Menstrual cycles are beginning 5 years earlier than they did 2 generations ago for women, for teenagers.
It's so crazy. So, the great conversation needs to be, what are we going to do to fix this? And instead of that, they want to create a shield for themselves to avoid liability. This goes against our constitutional rights. The Fifth Amendment is all about due process, us being able to take, a criminal to court, and that's exactly who these people are. And a lot of times, they're operating without conscience, and the scale that they're working on, that they're creating this toxicity, it's incredible. I mentioned the longevity going down 5 and 6 years. By my math, that works out to maybe 20 million people have died too soon in our country, at an average of.
Or maybe 1.5 billion years of American life have
Right.
been cut short over that period
Exactly.
of time.
Yep.
1.5 billion years.
That's wild, isn't it? So,
Preventable.
and it's not just the lousy, years at the very end of our lives that they're taken from us. It's everything that we can be right now, our vitality, our productivity, everything that we can enjoy out of life. So, it really is a problem for all of us, and it's affecting our kids the most. They're the ones that are the most vulnerable to these chemicals because they don't have the kidneys developed, and yeah, they're getting more of it.
So I'll talk about Casey, Dr. Casey Means one more time here because she concluded her speech at that roundtable by saying that this is, and she's not the only one to say this, it's an all hands on deck situation. And we talk about solutions, which we both want to achieve. How do we get to a solution? I think what's critically important is that we all name the problem, that we depoliticize this. We recognize that this is a human health crisis, existential to our species, no less, right? And Bobby Kennedy said that same day, I think it was Monday, he said, unfortunately, the most precious asset for the healthcare system is a sick child. And so we are exchanging, and I say this all the time, Jonny, and I say it a little more resoundingly each time. We're exchanging our physical, mental, emotional, financial, and spiritual health and even years of our lives for the profit spigot of these corporations who are addicted to growing stock prices, stock options, wealth, and power for themselves. And they use the auspices of healthcare to achieve that objective when in fact it's really sick care. And we're the lab rats, we're the sheep. And until we wake up as a people and stop pointing fingers at Democrats and Republicans, we need to come together and say, enough, enough. We have to unite and do something about this and say no to our doctors when they try to force vaccines on our children where they themselves don't even know what's in them, but yet they're getting significant rewards and royalties for disseminating those needles into the 24 injections, 24 doses of vaccines in a child's first year, just as their nascent immune systems are developing, Jonny. Finding how an immune system discovers its environment, makes its way in the world. It doesn't need toxic adjuvants to get the hell in the way of that, right?
Well, Paul, I
So,
like what somebody brought up. You give a child, one ingredient at a time. You try to avoid even giving them cinnamon apples all at once. You give them the apples, then the cinnamon apples, right? And so, for these adjuvants, like you said, the hepatitis B shot on the first day of life, it's got 12 plus toxins in it.
right.
And these are not tested for safety like all other medications that we have are. There's no true placebo safety testing. Um, it's really wild what we're letting happen to our children. And big pharma is known to be, the most criminal enterprise of any industry, or it's widely regarded as so.
Right.
and
Right.
they've had to pay 80 plus $1 billion in criminal penalties for fraud in just the last 12 years. You know, we can't trust them, and
Hmm.
they're not giving us the science that we need, and there's a financial bias, and yeah, we've got to do this for our kids.
It gets a little scarier here because there's another clause in this farm bill that talks about taking away the ability of states and local governments to override any federal mandates of the use of pesticides, so that if the EPA authorizes X% increase in the use of glyphosate, and it's not just on the farms, by the way, right, Johnny? We know it's on the baseball fields, it's on the school playgrounds, it's in people's neighborhoods everywhere, any public place, depending on where you live, and you can check this out. We have ways of helping people determine if their neighborhood actually is susceptible to glyphosate poisoning. But but imagine not being able to, as a resident of your own community, being powerless over the amount of glyphosate that's sprayed. And it doesn't even have to be on your property, right? It could be down the block. It could be a half a mile away. Like you said, it gets in the soil, it gets in the water, and it has long lasting effects, right? So imagine that part of the bill passing. That sounds a little bit more like totalitarianism to me, Johnny.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. The Constitution is there to, stop the government from doing too much. And what the government seeks to do with this bill, or Monsanto's lobbyists through the government, is right. Restrict our freedoms to, enact legislation that we've got all over already. I'm in a red state. I'm in Florida, and a dozen plus counties have already banned the use of glyphosate at some level. A lot of this is just for city workers, not to spray it in the parks and in the schools where the kids are playing. I mentioned how this is so it's really so correlated with the increased use of autism. Can you imagine? Your kids out there playing, and they're rolling around in the grass, and to take out a dandelion, there's a poison, that is one of the worst things for them. And so a lot of counties have woken up to this. Hundreds of them. This stuff is banned in a dozen plus countries. But you know what? In the localities, you're absolutely right. This is our 10th Amendment right, our states' rights to have sovereignty, to be able to choose, to protect ourselves. And
Founding fathers knew.
yeah, and these entities are up against these are like imperialists. These are big international corporations with limited accountability. When they get in trouble for harming millions, nobody goes to jail. They just give a fraction of their profits. So it's really just a slap on the wrist, and they're financially incentivized to keep doing it. And that's exactly what we're seeing. I thought that when Kennedy won that case against them in 2018, well, that was great. We're going to be, seeing the phase out of this chemical in our food. They're still selling it on the shelves next to the candy at Home Depot and your hardware store. Okay,
Hmm.
how many accidents per year is that stuff spilled near that food that the kids are picking up? So this is just it's wild what's going on. We've got to demand. Honestly, there should be a state of emergency declared for what's going on with American health, and glyphosate, I believe, is the main culprit for our health deficits. And this liability shield is the wrong direction. I think we need to take all this energy, take all this momentum from what they're doing, and take this as a catalyst to demand real action, that they get this poison out of our food and water immediately.
I'd love to see both sides of the aisle come together on this. And I think it's possible because if enough people demand it, then it's going to be people, these politicians are going to be held accountable for not supporting the overturning of these insane regulations, right? Uh, Great example. Talk about Dr. Redfield, who was under Trump. I think he was Trump's CDC director, but he's had a change of heart. I don't know if a change of heart is the right word, but he's been more of a whistleblower. I consider him in many ways a hero for the things he said. And he put out an op-ed just the other day, didn't he? Or was it yesterday?
This was big news here this week. Yeah, he came out. He told Kennedy, "Hey, you're right about everything." He wrote a full-throated kind of endorsement of Trump and what he's doing with Kennedy, and that if there's anybody to fix our health in this country, that Trump chose the right person in Kennedy. So yeah, that was great to hear because like you said, Dr. Redfield was on the other side of this. He was criticized as much as anyone, almost, in Kennedy's book, The Real Anthony Fauci, for a lack of
Mm,
transparency in the way that the COVID vaccines were rolled out, a lot of the decisions that were made there, and criticizing his research into the AIDS medication way back when. So
right, right. So we need more people like that. And what, they say, Johnny, if you have this merger of state and corporate power, which kind of fits the definition of fascism. I use the term totalitarianism. In some ways, those terms can be either, there's a lot of common ground, if not interchangeable terms. But if you control the money and the politicians, and you control the narrative through the media, right? So we've got this medical industrial complex with government in the middle, and the media industrial complex, and they then, not only do they silence critics like Bobby Kennedy and other great doctors, thousands of them, who have tried to stand up and be the voice of opposition, because they're putting the patient first as opposed to the profit narrative. They put the patient first. They don't just get silenced. That's part one. Part two is you smear them, you demoralize them, you take their license away, shame them, and we've seen many doctors go through that, right? And to me, that is a particular kind of atrocity that has the word evil written all over it.
absolutely. Yeah, it's just incredible, and it's really unconscionable what's being allowed to happen. And I think we're just so distracted and divided in this country, and this doesn't just harm our our health, of course, but it harms our cognitive abilities. And I think that people, they're overwhelmed by all of this, and it really is something that our so-called representatives, they really need to be addressing for us. This is I I've heard this kind of compared to a Holocaust, and if you look up the definition, I think that applies. Like I said, I think tens of millions of people have their lives have been cut short, and yeah, we really got to declare a state of emergency and to really address this. And yeah, if people want to help out, I think we're gonna have the links down in the comments of where people can come and be set up to help send a letter to their legislatures and sign a petition and come join this fight with us.
So we will get into that. Bobby Kennedy said that he wants to, make it a declare a state of emergency, right?
Absolutely. I think he's spot on with that. I think that I this issue, I think, is more important for most Americans maybe than everything else combined. And that's wild to say because we've got some of the biggest challenges maybe our history's ever had. The threat of World War III. We've got a wide open border. We've got an attack on freedom of speech. People. We've got these labs that are are putting us in danger of another pandemic. We've got AI, but you know just imagine that each of us is losing all of our friends, all of our loved ones, and ourselves 5 and 6 years early on average, and the associated vitality of what we should be able to be capable of today. So yeah, this is something we
I
got to
think when
address.
the history books are written, Johnny, if they're allowed to be written, I always say, because we don't know what the future is going to look like if this big brother really takes hold, you know. But I think they'll discover that a lot of the things that the so-called quacks and lunatics and fringe people had to say turned out to be absolutely spot on. And it's about uh, not it's not about being a conspiracy theorist just for the sake of having a conspiracy. It's about common sense. It's about a certain set of values. And it's about humility and recognizing that we really know very little about the human body. What we do know is that the studies that really need to be done have not been done. We don't know the effects of the combination of these toxic adjuvants that are being put in people's bodies. We see that, so how much of it is from the vaccines? How much of it is from the glyphosate and other chemicals? How much is from the air that we breathe? Um, I don't know. I believe they're all contributory factors there, but the agencies, and Bobby Kennedy tells us that's where the real problem lies because they have been bought and paid for. They're not doing the studies that they need to be doing, which begs the question: who are they working for?
That's exactly it.
There's
That's something Dr. Redfield touched on is talking about the agency capture that Kennedy talks about all the time. And we
right.
see it. We see the money trail. We see that of all the industries, big pharma now is paying the most to our Congress. And it's over $1 million per congressman per year on average. What are they paying for? What influence is that getting them? We're the only country in the world, just about us in New Zealand, that allow ads from big pharma on our TV set, and
New
I'm just
Zealand is very restrictive about it too.
are they? I
Whereas
didn't know that.
here, it's like two-thirds of all the advertising is big pharma, especially on those evening talk shows.
Right,
And
and it's been called out that they're not even doing that to sell pills, because of course they shouldn't be, because your doctor should be prescribing you what you need, but they're
right.
doing that to buy influence. They're doing that to control the narrative, so that like I said, $80+ billion they've had to pay in criminal penalties in just the last 12 years. They're trying to control the narrative so they can keep business going as usual.
So, I say to all of those, I hope I don't get in trouble. Even if I get in trouble, I don't care. To these talk show hosts, I don't want to name them by names, but all of you talk show hosts on CNN and Fox and MSNBC and whatever other mainstream media channel you want to name, okay, get your head out of your ass and put the people first because this is an atrocity and you are complicit. Your silence is unacceptable. You have to speak out against this. When these stories are there to be told, you have to tell them it's your job. Do your job.
Do
That's
your
my
job.
that's my response.
I love it. Is absolutely right. And Bayer, we talk about big pharma. Now Bayer, they vertically integrated this whole thing. So that Bayer has bought Monsanto. So big pharma now owns Big Poison, who's taken us out. So, you know, they're they're poisoning us, and then they're selling us the remedy. So, we're spending, more than almost twice per capita of any other country in the West on our healthcare,
Mm-hmm.
and we're about the sickest. So, we've got to turn this around, and it really is past the pale of being ridiculous.
We're part of a group called Health Revolution USA. That's the moniker behind me, and below me you can see. Go. It's a fairly new group that was founded through the Kennedy for President movement. There's so much we can all do. There's so much we can do. Learn about this farm bill. Talk to your representatives. Get in touch with them. Children's Health Defense Fund is another great group that's active in fighting against these atrocities. BeyondPesticides.org is another. Kim Conte's Non-Toxic Neighborhoods is another. The list goes on and on. There's a lot we can do. But sitting idly by, Jonny, that's not going to get it done. We need people to stand up because that's the only way that this system of exploitation is going to stop is if we the people make it stop.
Absolutely right. And yeah, I would just add that, I think that for the time that we're in here in America, that for us, being active on this issue and making change may be the best way we can do good and love ourselves and our loved ones.
Hmm. Amen. Amen. Uh, I really appreciate your taking the time to do this on the day that a Category 3 hurricane ripped through your town and took out your power, and yet here you are. That's true to the Johnny Paradise spirit. I'm impressed and grateful. Thank you.
No sweat. Thank you,
We'll
Paul.
do this again soon, my friend.
All right. It's good to see you.